Hey everybody, how we all doing? I'm Michael, also known as One More Time, and we're here with another edition of the Game Boy-A-Thon, a series where we play all 512 Game Boy games released in North America and find something interesting to talk about each one. It's good to see you, Gumakuma, Worms a Can, P-Bug, and Eevee. Thank you all for joining us. And anybody who ends up watching this on YouTube or pops in later, thank you for watching this as well. I do appreciate it. Glad you're finding this interesting, and I hope we have a pretty good, interesting episode for you today as well. And I personally think we do. We have four games that we're going to be going over today. Kind of an odd selection, but a surprisingly interesting set of games. Some of them are going to be, we're going to be going over some licensed properties. One that's going to involve a company that's going to be honestly rather shameless with how they repurpose a video game. And it just a couple of others that are going to have their own little bits of interesting trivia behind them. But yeah, that's what we got for you all today. We should probably go ahead and get started, though, with our first game, which is going to be... Oh, you got a little bit of a preview there when I clicked the wrong thing. Why, what's that? What's that Tarzan-looking figure, you ask? Why, it's Tarzan, Lord of the Jungle. Fair warning, a lot of these games are a little bit more obscure, and finding good box art for them was not easy. So I hope you like a lot of blurry images with stickers on them. Such as this one, Tarzan, the Lord of the Jungle. Let me just go ahead and get everything properly set up. There we go. So yes, good old Tarzan, Lord of the Jungle. This is developed by Eurocom and published by GameTech, a company that's really more known for their licensed game show titles, as opposed to platformers such as this. Released in 1994. You probably think this sounds awful? That's because it does. This is not a very nice sounding game. Yeah, as Kumakuma is mentioning, wait, why is Rambozant on the box? That's honestly a great question. It's really, really good box art, but it also is, yeah, that dude's just straight up Rambo. I'm not really sure what's going on there. It's an interesting choice, needless to say. So yeah, this is actually a side-scroller. You can start out by selecting your difficulty and whatnot. We're just gonna go with normal. Each stage is kind of different. It's not just get from point A to point B. You actually have to accomplish objectives in them, such as level 1, the Witch Doctor, where a great ape has a mysterious illness which can only be cured by a special potion created by the Witch Doctor. I don't remember which novel this is from, but yeah, sure, okay. Tarzan must collect rare flowers for the potion, take it to the Witch Doctor, and collect a potion to cure the great ape. So, here's our ape buddy that we're going to have to help out. My apologies, 1 second. Apparently, I had a few buttons configured, but not all of them. I had to, last minute, kind of switch emulators. It was kind of an odd little issue that showed up literally right before stream where, well, the one that I was using just sort of refuses to run anymore. It's really great. But yeah. So yeah, this, once again, is a game that is based upon the Tarzan license. And for those of you who don't know, Tarzan has a bit of a history behind it. Tarzan, this particular game is based upon the novels written in the early 20th century by Edgar Rice Burroughs, a noted pulpy fantasy and adventure writer who was also, unfortunately, a bit of a racist and eugenicist, which, early 20th century, that's kind of par for the course, unfortunately. But, at the time that he wrote this, in 1912, he was known more for his, like, pulpy novels and essays. These would be often published in magazines such as All Story Magazine and the like. However, while he was successful, he didn't really break out until he published Tarzan of the Apes in 1912. Now, everyone knows, I think pretty much everyone knows who Tarzan is, but I don't think they're really kind of aware of like the first couple books or whatnot. And Tarzan of the Apes is the first one that, obviously establishes Tarzan. His entire backstory of how he was raised by apes. Jane, the woman he loves, the European woman, or British woman specifically, who basically ends up more or less coming to study the great apes in Africa. And among other things. So, once again, this first novel, Tarzan of the Great Apes, is one that actually establishes everything. And it's actually kind of a sad story that has a kind of a weird ending. And that ending is that Tarzan actually, like Jane leaves Africa, Tarzan actually follows her to Wisconsin. Which, no, seriously, he goes to Wisconsin. And he finds out that Jane is actually happily engaged to what turns out to be his cousin. Because Tarzan, when his parents crash landed with him alongside him when he was a baby, turns out they were British nobles. And she happened to be engaged to his cousin, who's also a British noble. He finds that Jane's happy, and he actually decides to leave. He's like, you know what, she deserves to be happy. She deserves to be married to somebody who's going to treat her well. So I'm just going to leave and go back to Africa. So yeah, this novel was incredibly successful, and it's a huge cultural touchstone for the United States. As far as, like, Tarzan is like shorthand for ape man, essentially, or like like wild person who lives in a jungle. So yeah, needless to say, this did incredibly well for him. He went from being kind of a destitute, pulpy author to a man who's going to become very, very rich, and what have you. So. And part of the reason why Edgar Rice Burroughs is going to become so rich and whatnot is because he's going to monetize and merchandise the hell out of Tarzan. Because you see, Tarzan and the Apes is not going to be the only Tarzan novel. In fact, it's going to be one of 22 novels that he is... Actually, 24 novels, my apologies. 24 novels that Edgar Rice Burroughs is going to write over the course of his career. Like, he immediately wrote a sequel in 1913 that was called The Return of Tarzan, which does end up with Jane and Tarzan together and whatnot. And from there, he turned Tarzan into a merchandising machine, which would have film adaptations, radio plays, dolls and toys. Like early 20th century dolls and toys, which are always a lot of fun. And among the like. In many ways, his family would actually sort of marry into the Tarzan family line, because when the radio play debuted in the 1930s, his daughter, Joan Burroughs, ended up actually marrying the actor who would play Tarzan, who was James Pierce. It's kind of a weird fun fact with that. So yeah, all in all, 24 novels would be collected and published over the course of Burroughs' life. And to this day, Tarzan is still well known, and is still being adapted to different properties to this day. Most recently, like the most recent big budget one would be 2016's The Legend of Tarzan, which, if I remember correctly, nobody really watched. I think it was kind of a flop. Now, this game in particular does not seem to be based upon any sort of specific piece of Tarzan fiction or literature. I tried to look around to see if there just happened to be anything that was kind of going on with the Tarzan license around this time. But it turns out not really. Like, the Disney movie didn't come out until, what was it, the early 2000s? And there was a TV show, there was a cartoon actually that was in the 70s that was called Tarzan, Lord of the Jungle. It should be noted that there was a novel that was called Tarzan, Lord of the Jungle, and that was the 11th novel in the series. But its plot doesn't seem to really line up with anything that happens in this game, so it seems like they just kind of chose the name Tarzan, Lord of the Jungle because, to be honest, it sounds pretty good. Not bad. 10 out of 10. Would name a novel after it. Or a video game after it. So, they ended up making this game. And they actually ended up porting this to the Game Gear as well. Based entirely off the Game Boy version, which is a very, very rough-looking game. Because literally, they just basically took, like, the Game Boy's, like, screen size and, like, sprites and everything, and just, like, kind of colorized them. Threw them into the the Game Gear sound chip. Just, like, transplanted all the music tracks to that. And just threw it out on the Game Gear, and it just, ugh. It's really, really rough. Oh, Worms Can has something interesting to say. My favorite Tarzan fact is how insane the legal status of this trademark is. Do you mind elaborating? I'm actually not aware of that. I am aware of how difficult it is to control this game, though. So, I don't know how the Game Gear version controls, but this game is very poor. Like, the speed that it moves at is pretty slow, which is good for a Game Boy game. But, your jumping is very, very strange. You actually accelerate when you jump. As you can tell, this is actually like the speedrun tech, because it just jump constantly, it looks like. Worms Can has elaborated a little bit more. Tarzan, the story is public domain. However, Tarzan, the character, is trademarked, and the owner of the trademark will aggressively sue. Ah. Yeah, so it makes it undoubtedly difficult to get anything Tarzan-related made. That kind of makes sense. Yeah, trademark and copyright law in the United States is quite a beast. So that is unfortunately unsurprising. So we're trying to find 9 of these special flowers, and unfortunately this level, they're all spread out through this level, and it's rather frustrating to find. So yeah, Gamakuma said earlier that this already seems like a Euro platformer, and he's completely correct. It's large levels, very maze-like, controls absolutely terribly. I think we can make this jump, but I'm just not really sure. Yeah. Ugh, can't quite make it, though. We just can't quite make it. Well, while we continue to fail to find all these different little flowers, let's talk a little bit more about the development history of this. Oh, we're about to run out of time, so you also don't have a whole lot of time to find these 9 flowers, it turns out. And time up. Goodbye, Tarzan. Disappeared into just a cloud of stars. Oh, yeah, at least keep her progress, so that's good. Okay, there's a flower up there, so we just need to figure out how to get... I'm sorry, what? Just need to figure out how to get up there. So, there was a Game Boy game, obviously, that we're playing right now. There was also a Game Gear game as well. But there was actually going to be a Super Nintendo game that was going to be developed. But unfortunately, it ended up getting canceled at the last minute. Now, this game was going to be really, really crazy because, oh boy, was it different and also really, really ambitious. In 2019, actually, a prototype of this game was acquired and released to the wider internet that shows a very different, if albeit very unfinished, Tarzan. Let's just climb up this vine. How about we just do that? So, developed by Manley and Associates, which is now known as Electronic Arts Seattle, this game they were contracted by Game Tech to make a game to be released in 1994 for the, why didn't I not jump there? For the Super Nintendo. Now, this game was also going to be called Tarzan, Lord of the Jungle. And its game had a wildly different look and feel from the portable versions. So, to start, even though it's only like a prototype, the graphics, particularly the backgrounds, and Tarzan himself, like, incredibly detailed and expressive. And I'm going to show a little bit of that in a bit. And Tarzan himself moves in a very, like, Prince of Persia sort of way. If you ever played Prince of Persia, or, like, Blackthorn, the way the characters move in that game is very, very deliberate. Like, they move very, very slow. The jumps themselves have to be kind of, like, planned out. Because the whole idea is to have, like, I guess, let's call it quote-unquote realistic movement. And this Tarzan game was going to be no different. Although you're still running around collecting, like, coins and stuff. Now, this movement being deliberate and weighty didn't really make it ideal for the pure platformer that they were kind of going for. And while this game did make a few trade shows, it didn't get too far into development because of reasons like this. Like, GameTech would visit our office, see the controls that were going on, and we're like, you know, we're not really feeling what you're doing here. This just doesn't really feel right for Tarzan, and for the game that we're kind of hoping you'll make. Now, that's not the only reason, though, that this game ended up being canceled. Oh no, I wanted to jump there. Oh well, we got in here, so this is not so bad. The other reason is because there's one gameplay aspect that was kind of reflecting poorly on GameTech and Manley and Associates. You see, this game is lovingly animated. And once again, that's not only because of like how Tarzan like looks, moves, and like swings around on vines and whatnot, but also with how he just completely coldly murders animals with a knife. So we're just going to take a real quick pause. I'm going to show you an animation of what I'm talking about here. Here's Tarzan. Here's Tarzan knifing a lion. So you can see, lovingly animated. But that lion is being murdered horrifically. And by the way, that's not the only thing he restrains and stabs with a knife. This includes people as well. Like, weird, like, savages, but, like, I guess, like, other, like, shipwrecked people, because they're, like, all Caucasian. Which is probably for the best, let's be honest. But yeah! So, this game essentially involved a lot of that. Which, you could probably imagine, that didn't play real well. That didn't play well with GameTech. GameTech was not happy with that. Yeah, so, like, needless to say, that was not going to fly. And as one of the developers who worked on it reported, it's like, basically the game was like Tarzan essentially going through a zoo, coldly murdering a bunch of endangered species. Which is like, you know, that's a choice. That's a choice, all right. So, Manley and Associates tried to change this up by making it so that when lions and other animals stab, they would just disappear into a puff of smoke. But that still wasn't quite good enough. And when you combine that with the fact that it was going to miss its 1994 Christmas release date, GameTech decided to just quietly cancel the game. Not the first somewhat ambitious game based on a licensed property that GameTech is going to unceremoniously cancel, by the way. Which, once we get to some other GameTech games, we'll talk about that a little further. Honestly, I do think it's too bad that we never really got this game. Because while it is, let's call it ill-conceived. How do you even swing across there? I have no clue. While it isn't ill-conceived, it was a very, very nice-looking game. And quite different from what you'd expect on the Super Nintendo. So yeah, my verdict on this game is that it's terrible. If I'm being perfectly honest. It's hard to figure out how exactly to swing on vines. The movement is odd. Like, it doesn't control bad once again, but it's just... the movement is just very, very odd. That's the Witch Doctor we're supposed to drop everything off at, by the way. Don't really know how. I think he just damages you if you don't show up with what he needs. But yeah, it's unclear where everything is. Graphically, it's fine. I bet you this probably plays okay on a Game Boy screen, or at least I would have... I have no reason to believe that it wouldn't. But, like a lot of games published by GameTech, it's not very good. It's not a very good game. Just from first blush, and... mind you, I've attempted to play this game multiple times and learned the controls, and have failed every time. So, I feel like I've done due diligence with this one. We'll play a little bit longer to see if we can't find a few more things. But, you know, I think we've seen more or less what we need to see. kind of cool that you can like get different spears and whatnot, and could throw different objects, even if enemies are a little spongy in a way. Did we go down here? We did. That spider just spawned out of nowhere. That was great. Love it. Let's see how much longer I can tolerate failing to make this jump. Okay, we have to obviously get there from another angle. So let's go this... But it's not this way. Well, yeah, you know what? I think we've seen everything we need to see from this. Don't you agree? So why don't we go ahead and move on to our next game? And our next game, unfortunately, is not going to be any better. Today's kind of the real winners as far as good video games. And that's Sports Illustrated for Kids, the ultimate triple dare. Developed by Malibu Games and published by Hellstrom. Actually, I think I had that backwards. My apologies. Developed by Hellstrom and published by Malibu Games and released in 1994. This is a weird sports game. Warzcan has some updated data about the Tarzan legal situation. So, the legal situation with Tarzan is both the character and stories are public domain, but calling a feral child raisin in the jungle Tarzan is trademarked. That is incredibly stupid. I love it. I absolutely love it. So, Sports Illustrated for Kids, the ultimate triple dare, is one of 2 Sports Illustrated branded games released for the Game Boy. Now, we start by selecting our character. Do you want to play as Matt, who plays bass in a band he started with some friends from school, who also likes to collect comic books and trading cards? Or do you want to play as Kim, who goes on rock climbs and plays on a softball team? She writes for the school paper and may go into journalism, but she hasn't decided yet. We're gonna play as this guy. So, this is a game that features 3 different sports. You're going to have snowboarding, skateboarding, and this is just called bicycling, but it seems to be more like mountain biking, just sort of in general. And you can either play one of these 3 or do a triathlon called the Triple Dare. We're going to do them one at a time, and then we'll probably get to the Triple Dare. So, starting with snowboarding, we gotta do downhill or half pipe. Let's start with downhill, because downhill's pretty bad, and I kind of want to show it off. What is kind of cool is you can either pick regular goofy styles, which is just how you stand on the board, except essentially like right-footed or left-foot lead. So that's kind of interesting that they have that option. So, this is a game that I am 99% certain on the Game Boy screen looks like a complete mess. Just offhand. There are physics. You get snowballs, which you can hit people with. Warzcan says, so you're saying it's all downhill from here, and you're not wrong. You have to do your best to avoid trees and get to the bottom. You get additional points for hitting people with snowballs. And in general, you are just kind of doing your best to not mess up. The game moves very quickly, your sprite's very large, and it's kind of difficult to see what's coming up above. And once again, I think on the regular Game Boy screen, this was probably incomprehensible. Though as somebody who's tried skiing and snowboarding, this is actually pretty accurate for first-timers attempting to snowboard or ski, so points for realism for getting that. Oh no, we need to get to the bottom! Oh, I wonder if actually we need to hit everybody. Oh no, what's with all those other kids powdering my melon with snowballs? I got a face full of the hard pack out there, so be careful, dude. Matt's messed up. Matt's got a black eye. Oh, poor Matt. Oh dear, let's do half pipe instead. Oh boy. That poor guy. This seems like a far better idea Just offhand. Oh god, there's potholes. You gotta be careful about the potholes. Trying to do tricks. Oh, yeah. Alright, hey. Are there any sort of grab tricks? It doesn't really look like there are. This game already is much, much better than the downhill portion, I must say. So, one thing to note about this game is, while it uses the Sports Illustrated license, it very more specifically uses the Sports Illustrated for Kids license. Now, Sports Illustrated for Kids was a magazine that was released first published, I should say, in 1989. And it's still published today. And the whole idea was to have... Okay, we gotta read this first. Man, I got totally trashed out there. I also think I might have dislocated my shoulder, too. Oh, God. This poor guy. Let's try snowboarding again. So yeah, Sports Illustrated for Kids was first published in 1989. And the whole idea was basically to introduce sports and also advertise sports-related products to kids for ages from, like, I think about, like, 7 to 12 was about the age range that they were going for. I was actually subscribed to this particular magazine back in the day. And I remember really, really enjoying it. It was pretty cool because it would have, like, comics, such as, like, Buzz Beamer, who actually kind of looked like me when I was young, which is kind of neat. And, you know, like, it would come with, like, not magazines, it would come with posters and trading cards, which I always thought was really neat. And, you know, it just had kind of, like, you know, fun interviews with athletes and whatnot. It, you know, as a kid growing up who loved sports, really, really enjoyed it. As time went on and as his audience got, like, you know, older, they did start having, like, segments that were more for the teen audience, literally called Sports Illustrated for Teens. And nowadays, they ended up they just now have, like, an article that's selected from Sports Illustrated that's inserted into the magazine for kids who are a little bit older and want to enjoy that. So yeah, pretty cool little thing, and I really enjoyed it. So, did great there. Let's go. Oh, we got different kids! Oh, hello. Interesting. Okay, let's read about these kids real quick. This is Susie. She enjoys horseback rides and boating on the lake near home. Susie is very bougie. Would like to study abroad and travel all around the world. Damien plays forward on the Weir Wildcats basketball team. They don't specify small forward or power forward, but that's okay. Also, I guess he's, you know, he's a hybrid, I guess. Also enjoys weekend trips fly fishing on the river with his dad. Cool. Let's play Susie. Alright, let's do Blazing Boards. Urban, sure. So, this game kind of makes sense, like, the decisions that they made. That was a speed boosting arrow. Kind of makes sense the sports that they picked for this game. This was around the time that extreme sports started to have, like, a huge, started to, like, really get really popular. Particularly snowboarding and skateboarding, which are both featured here. Like, the 90s is when the X Games got started, for instance. So, sort of... This controls horribly, by the way. So it sort of makes sense that they decided to include these games in here. Way to be appealing to a younger audience and whatnot. By being like, look, it's the cool extreme sports that you all like. Like, skateboarding, poorly. Or snowboarding, also poorly. Hey, I got splashed! Who are these kids throwing the water balloons? I'll knock their blocks off. Oh well, I should try for a faster time. Alright, let's try half pipe. So yeah, it totally makes sense that they decided to do this and include these particular sports. So I guess we're trying to get all the flags? Okay. Yeah, Susie's got anger management issues, apparently. So, I want to talk about something about the development of this game. Or more specifically, I want to talk about the lead programmer for this game. And that's a man by the name of Daniel Filner. And by lead programmer, I have to also say that I believe he's also the only programmer for this game. I have no idea how to get out of this half pipe, by the way. We're going to be here for a while. Now, and I said Dave Filner. My apologies to Mr. Filner, Daniel Filner. Now, Daniel Filner is a programming engineer with a 33-year history of video games. He first got a start in 1969. My God, 1989 with LucasArts. Now, his whole deal as a contract worker for LucasArts was he was helping to port their Scum-based games, so think The Curse of Monkey Island and whatnot. To computers such as like the Atari ST and whatnot. And he did that for about 3 years before moving on to Equilibrium, another company. There, he became a lead programmer on numerous titles. I'm getting some tricks done here. Look at that. Oh, look at that. That's not bad. Alright. So if I choose the right tunnel, I can reach many flags. If I choose the wrong tunnel, I run into black pearls. I need to choose wisely. What? Got it. Let's go to Urban again. So, while Daniel was at Equilibrium, he became the lead programmer on numerous titles, including some pretty notorious ones. Now, if y'all remember from a couple episodes ago, we played a very terrible game called The Attack of the Killer Tomatoes. Our friend Daniel here was the lead programmer on that game. A game that is terrible. And also doesn't really run very well. He was a contractor at the time, so I'm gonna say that's the reason why it wasn't very good. I'm gonna give him that excuse. This controls so terribly. You do not understand, by the way. Also, we're just a land of, like, parking meters everywhere. So, he ended up programming quite a few Game Boy games during his time at Equilibrium. Games that we will eventually end up playing. But he eventually ended up leaving Equilibrium and going to Hailstrom in 1992. Once again, as a contract programmer, from what I understand. And that's where he did the 2 Sports Illustrated games, including the one we're playing today. We'll go ahead and do Trail now. So, however, in 1995, he left Hailstrom to take a contract with Digital Eclipse. And where he ended up actually... Oh my god, I just died. You have to duck on those, huh? But yeah, he left for Digital Eclipse in 1995. Did that mole read a newspaper? So, once again, 1995, he went to Digital Eclipse, where he ended up finding his calling in some ways. So, for those of you who don't know, Digital Eclipse is an American video game developer that specializes in ports of classic games to modern hardware, and they've basically been doing this their entire history. Oh, so yes, I do apologize for this music. It is very bad. Very, very bad. So, Digital Eclipse has done quite ports of basically everything, and these include like arcade games for like the Game Boy Color, as well as like Mega Man, the Mega Man Legacy Collection for the Switch. Now, they did briefly cease to exist in 2012 for a brief time, but in 2015 they were revived by Andrew Airy, Mike Micah, and Frank Cifaldi of the Video Game History Foundation, with the sole purpose of taking Digital Eclipse's original purpose to a logical extreme by preserving and releasing games as close to the original releases as humanly possible. So, Daniel went to work for Digital Eclipse, helping import Midway and Atari games to various consoles, such as the Sega Saturn and whatnot. When Digital Eclipse became Backbone Entertainment for about, like, 10 years or so, he also went along for the ride and continued doing that. helping to program games such as the Xbox Live arcade version of The Simpsons, as well as the X-Men arcade game as well. And game compilations such as the Capcom Classics Collection. Gamakuma says Digital Eclipse and M3 are heroes, and I agree. They're very, very important for the work they've done in the video game preservation scene. Very thankful that they exist, and I appreciate their attention to detail. Big reason I actually wanted to talk about Daniel, because of his work that he's done. I am just not moving here. This is basically just snowboarding, by the way. So, it's clear from this work he became inspired to create a more accurate and specific emulator for certain games, particularly arcade games. Are this? What animal is that? Is that supposed to be a raccoon? Huh. So, in 1997, he formed his own LLC, Tile Killer, from which he would do consulting work for, like, various companies, including Digital Eclipse. And from there, he would develop his own commercial emulator for arcade games. Now, this final project, when it would be released in the late 2010s, would be called Moo. Now, Moo is a special type of arcade emulator that's made to target specific games. Like most emulators you think of are meant for something that's, like, very general. Like, you know, you make a Game Boy emulator to play all Game Boy games. You make a Super Nintendo emulator to play all Super Nintendo games. What Moo does instead is that it targets very specific games, and in order to achieve greater accuracy, the emulator is more or less tailored to work specifically on that emulator. So, basically, you avoid issues of incompatibility or weird glitches that might show up on a more general emulator for, you know, say like the Simpsons arcade game or something like that. Just a way of being able to be more compatible, and also coded in a format that allows for easy porting to other consoles. So you could make a collection for the Nintendo Switch, for instance, and then from there, easily port that to, say, the PS4, the PlayStation 4. Now, this idea ended up working out pretty well for him, and it's actually been included in quite a few good commercial projects. To give you some examples, the Street Fighter 30th Anniversary Collection, released on the Switch, uses the Moo emulator. And while there is some beef to be had with how some of the presentation of the games are, like the wrapper that's around all the games, how the games actually play is pretty darn spot on. And like how they sound, how they look, it's pretty close to arcade perfect. So, you know, honestly, did a pretty good job with that. The Moo emulator has been most recently used in an SNK Samurai Showdown collection. And I know that Capcom's going to be releasing a Darkstalkers collection coming up here, and I wouldn't be surprised if it uses the Moo emulator. I'll have to look into it when that game finally does get released to see if they actually did that. Because Moo also allows for other things such as like rollback netcode and whatnot, and other additional things that be hooked into these individual games. Like, it's a very multi-purpose sort of emulator. So, it's things like this that make me think that Daniel Filner is a very interesting person and a pretty important person in the games preservation scene. Even though I think the Game Boy games he worked on, such as Sports Illustrated for Kids, are kinda terrible. So, for the Ultimate Triple Dare, by the way, this is a very, very ambitious game. It controls terribly. I think there's some interesting uses of physics in here, like, particularly these downhill sections. Like, they do try to account for things like hills and whatnot, and do seemingly do a pretty good job at that. But unfortunately, it just feels very, very uncontrollable in ways that are unfortunate. And with how large the sprites are, and how relatively quick the action is, and the way the graphics are drawn in the background, once again, I'm pretty sure that this is a blurry mess on a Game Boy screen. Definitely not something I would recommend, and I hate to say it might be the worst sports game we've played on this stream so far. So, unfortunately, poor Daniel Filner is 0 for 2 when it comes to... Well, I actually think he did a good job programming this game. I'm actually not going to fault him for that, but 0 for 2 for working on games that I'm not sure are particularly good. Oh, we can stop the timer. Look at that. Hey, we made it to the end! We made it to the end, everybody! Hey, that was fun! I'll bet I can go onto the rest of these slopes and win with no problem. I'm ready to take my chances on the slalom next. Yeah, we did it. Very good. Yeah, not bad. Not bad. I'm learning. One thing I do want to note is, I do find it interesting that they do have a mountain biking course and a snowboarding course, or snowboarding /skiing course. Because that's actually a very common thing that a lot of ski resorts do. That during the summer, they will convert their skiing tracks to mountain biking tracks. Or ski runs to mountain biking tracks, I should say. As a way to entice people to the resort. Not all of them do that, but some of the bigger ones do. So, kind of interesting to do that. For, you know, what it's worth. It should be said that I hate mountain biking. I've never been a big mountain biker, although I do enjoy skiing quite a bit. Even though I'm very, very bad at it. How about we go ahead and finish up with this particular sport, and then we'll go ahead and move on to our next game. We're probably supposed to hit a certain point threshold, but... Yeah, that was bad! But I know I need to work on perfecting the individual moves before I'm able to put together a winning combination. Susie's pretty upbeat. Oh, and remember, everybody, be careful, yet bold. In fact, let's move on to a game that is very bold, albeit for... So we're going to get into some of the wrong reasons. And that is the Real Ghostbusters. So, the Real Ghostbusters. This is a game developed by Kemco and published by Activision, released in 1993. This is a puzzle platformer that's actually part of Kemco's Crazy Castle series. Games that mostly came out exclusively for the Game Boy, but did get its start on the Nintendo Entertainment System. Did I not say Crazy Castle? Did I flub that? Well, it's part of Kemco's Crazy Castle series. I wonder if I said Castle Crazy. I'm being a little dyslexic on my notes today, I've noticed. But yeah, so... these are a series of games that got their start on the Nintendo Entertainment System, but primarily are on the Game Boy. This game, though, is actually quite a bit different from a lot of the Crazy Castle games. In that it's really more of a... It's like even more of a puzzle platformer in many ways. At least as far as like its overall structure is. So, the objective here is that we need to get all these sparkles in order to get a giant key. Giant key then allows us to leave. So, hey, pretty simple, right? You use your proton pack in order to dig holes in the ground in a very Lode Runner sort of style. And you basically just kind of move through the stages, avoiding enemies. By the way, I want you to pay attention to the level layout of this stage, because we're going to be returning to it. And needless to say, it's gonna be something very, very jarring about it. You can bust these ghosts with bombs, if I remember correctly. So, let's bust them with these bombs. See? Yeah, thoroughly busted. So yeah, Crazy Castle is a very, very strange series. Probably one we'll talk a little bit more about in depth once we get to the actual, let's call them the proper Crazy Castle games. But they're really interesting in that the vast majority of them, all but the very last game in the series, are actually based upon, are all licensed titles in one way or another. Oh, actually, that warps you right back to the start in case you missed something. All right, cool. So the first game in the series that was released in Japan for the Famicom was based upon Roger Rabbit. Now, what happened is that by the time this game was supposed to come out in North America, they had lost the license to Roger Rabbit. So instead, they acquired a license to Bugs Bunny and the Looney Tunes. So in North America, it was released as, I believe, Crazy Castle starring Bugs Bunny. Now, they would end up making a sequel for the Game Boy, and in North America, these games would continue to be basically Looney Tunes and Bugs Bunny related, but in Japan, the license would actually be based upon Mickey Mouse. Which is actually kind of funny when you think about it, because, you know, this was back when Warner Brothers and Disney were very competitive as far as who had, like, kind of like the best animated cartoons, best theatrical shorts and whatnot. And even funny when you remember that in Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Mickey Mouse and Bugs Bunny both appear on screen at the same time. And a big deal was made about how, in order to make sure that both licensees were satisfied, the characters show up on screen for the exact same amount of time and have the exact same amount of lines, and are positioned at the even exact same height of the screen. So it's kind of funny that, you know, the Japanese version of this game ended up being based upon Mickey Mouse, and, well, not this particular game, but this series ended up being based upon Mickey Mouse, and the North American version being based upon Bugs Bunny. So that doesn't explain, though, how this game, for some reason, is based upon the Real Ghostbusters, the animated follow-up to the Ghostbusters movie. Something that's, let's be honest, it's a choice. It's a bit of a choice. Well, the reason is kind of silly. So for this game in particular, for the North American release, the publisher, Activision, had the license to Ghostbusters. So when they decided to publish this game, they just had Kemco redo the sprites, because this is a Mickey Mouse game in Japan. Redo the sprites to resemble Ghostbusters. Simple enough, right? Nothing too crazy. What's stranger, though, is that in Europe, this is neither a Ghostbusters or a Mickey Mouse game. Rather, it's based upon Garfield, the, you know, cat who really, really loves lasagna and hates Mondays. Why? I could not tell you. Garfield is internationally popular, so I guess that's kind of the reason why. But it still feels like a very strange choice, regardless. But hey, you know, you use what license you got, I guess. Another thing to also note is that these games, like, as far as like the enemies and whatnot, they're all the same. Like, they only alter like the player character and some other superficial elements. But like, you know, those like weird wizard ghosts that show up at on the first stage, those are also weird wizard ghosts in Mickey Mouse and in Garfield. Now, for the Mickey Mouse and Garfield games, it should also be noticed they obviously don't have like a proton pack. Like, that's a real Ghostbusters sort of thing. So instead, what they do in order to dig these holes, like weird Solomon's Key or Roadrunner style, is they actually have what's called like a pneumatic. They have a pneumatic drill that they use, which probably seems a little strange that Garfield and Mickey Mouse would have a pneumatic drill. But what if I told you there was a reason for that? What if I told you that there was an altogether scummy reason? Oh, that apparently automatically kills you, by the way. So, remember that second stage I told you all to pay attention to? Well, I want to introduce you all to a game that was released for the Amiga in 1992. Now, this game is called PP Hammer and its Pneumatic Weapon. And my apologies, it was 1991. This was developed by Demonware. I just want you to pay attention to this level design. This is the first level of the game. Just kind of check out what's going on here. So you got the setup of the blocks there, you're collecting these treasures. The flames have to start. Have to crawl down here to get another treasure. The Roman statues that were in the second stage of Ghostbusters. The keys you have to open up in order to get that treasure. All seems really familiar, doesn't it? The water, Roman statue. Now, no cool butt dance, which is really disappointing. I'm really disappointed about that there's no butt dance in Real Ghostbusters. As Gamakuma said, wow, this game ripped off Ghostbusters. Close. This game is an unauthorized recreation of that game. Kemco literally just stole that game, and with the exception of the very first stage, wholesale copied the vast majority of stages from that game for this. It is one of the most shameless things I have seen on this series so far. And it kind of made... I kind of suspected that there was something weird going on when I started playing this game, as somebody who has some familiarity with the Crazy Castle series, and was like, wait, but this doesn't quite play like a Crazy Castle game. Like, Crazy Castle is basically each stage has like a bunch of doors you have to run through to find keys and other power-ups, but there's like no digging mechanic or whatnot. And like, the stage, and unlike this game where like the stages are all displayed on like one screen, like there's multiple screens per stage in that game. Yeah, they just did not get the rights. They just said, screw it, we're just going to make this game. Because the developers for PP Hammer have come out and talked about it. And have talked about how, yeah, they were never given any authorization, nor did they receive any compensation for this. Now, you're probably wondering how exactly this happened, and that's because I believe the rights to PP Hammer are unfortunately in limbo. Demonware, the company who made this, went out of business in, I believe, 1993? And this game was developed and released in 1994. So, in case you're wondering how they were able to get away with this, that's kind of how. Or at least that seems to be the case. So yeah, very, very disappointing. You can't walk through this door. Oh, I hate that so much. Oh my god, and right there. Get wrecked, son. Get wrecked, son! So yeah, I never have known Kemco to be the most up-and-up company, but I've also never known them to do something quite like this. And needless to say, it was very surprising to find this out. Now, once again, we'll end up talking about the Crazy Castle series more in depth once we actually play the one of the million Crazy Castle games that are released for the Game Boy. But yeah, not cool, Kemco, not cool. So the property this is based upon is the Real Ghostbusters, which is a pretty successful cartoon series that ran for 7 seasons. That is like a sort of pseudo-sequel to Ghostbusters 1 and 2. Starring the vast majority of the main cast, albeit not their actors. Although, ironically, I forget which one of the actors didn't want to come back, but they just ended up replacing them anyways. Which is kind of messed up, but whatever. I guess he asked for too much money or something like that. But yeah, ran for 7 seasons, basically was big about having, like, Slimer, the ghost from the first movie, being featured as kind of like a mascot. Ended up getting a follow-up called the Extreme Ghostbusters. That came out like a year or two later. That's like a sequel to that as well. Nobody ever really talks about the Real Ghostbusters all that much anymore, but it did particularly well for them. Which it really does make sense, because Ghostbusters for a while was like just the hottest thing with kids. So it kind of makes sense. They did. Gumbakuma says, everybody became really gaunt for the extreme version, did they? Yes. Everyone is very thin and spindly with, like, pronounced cheekbones. It's a very strange look, needless to say. Very, very strange look. So, one thing I will say about this game, in comparison to, like, the other Crazy Castle games, or at least my recollection of them, it's been a long time since I played them. I do have to say, this game does play well. They might have shamelessly ripped off somebody in order to do it, but they did rip off a good game. It plays very well, and it does seem actually perfect for the Game Boy in many ways, with the way it moves and whatnot, and the puzzly elements that it has. It is extreme with an X, and no E. I said, believe it is. I might actually be wrong about that. You know what? Don't trust me on that. Don't quote me on that one. So now we need a... Okay, there's the exit. One thing I will say about this is that it does remind me of Solomon's Key. Another title inspired by Lone Runner. And Solomon's Key is great. Let's play, like, one more stage before we end up moving on. So, I'm not sure if these levels are in the same order as PP Hammers. I mean, obviously, the first stage of PP Hammer is the second stage in this, but it does seem odd that we keep going between, like, Roman ruins to, like, medieval castles and whatnot, which, if I remember correctly, those are distinct worlds in PP Hammer, so I'm guessing these stages are mixed up at least a little bit. I'll actually believe the wiki on that one. The Gumbakuma says the wiki says it's Extreme Ghostbusters with spelled with an E, which I'll go ahead and trust it. That seems legit to me. Oh, you need to duck down there before you get squashed. Thank you. I'm guessing... Oh, this is an invincibility potion. Huh. It should also be noted that in the Garfield version, you are attempting to rescue Odie, who's been kidnapped. Or I think he's just run off. You're trying to rescue Odie, is the point. The stage also has a lot of sparkles in it, I've noticed. Oh. Do we get an item that allows us to go in water without taking damage? I guess we must. Or we just go this way. Never mind. Yeah, I have to say, this is a thoroughly enjoyable video game. Do I have to use the heart in order to give myself health back? That's really silly. But, okay. I will say there are superficial similarities with this game and Crazy Castle, besides just the puzzle element. Both games do make use of, like, a menu system, if I remember correctly. Oh, I'm missing one. Oh, Wonder where I'm missing one. Oh. Just had to move to my left, it turns out. Yeah, once we get through the stage, we'll go ahead and move on to our final game today. Yep. Unquestionably the best game we've played so far today. Once again, bit of a shame that it's a very shameless copy. So let's move on to our final game, and that's a little game called Quarth. And also our first Konami game we're going to be playing on this channel. Or, in this series, I guess. We've definitely played Konami games on this channel before. So, Quarth. Quarth is a game developed by Konami and published by Ultra Games, which is just Konami, but we'll get into that in a second. Released in 1990, Gumba says, is this like Tetris plus Galaga? And the answer is sort of. It sort of is. So, this is a puzzle game. That is rather strange in that it is a block puzzle game, but it's played like a shoot 'em up. So you select your ship, and you basically have blocks that fall from the screen, like rectangular or rectangular or square blocks. And the idea is that you have to fill in these blocks in order to clear them. Like so. Now, you get additional things if you end up filling in multiple blocks at once. You'll get power-ups. Like that gives us a power-up right there. Ooh, that's a mess up on my part. Oh, this is bad. This could be bad, this could be bad. There we go. Woo! Woo, that was close. Yeah, so you can press up also to scroll the screen a little bit faster. And yeah, so the whole objective is just to clear out your entire board. Along the way, you'll get different power-ups so you can activate with the B button. If I had the manual, I could tell you what each one of these does. Spoiler alert, I don't. Also, you just need to make a square. Like, if there's holes in the square, it's fine, but as long as the perimeter of the square is even, you're fine. So there we go. So we're playing on a random mode. When you're playing on like a stage, you have to clear a certain amount of blocks before you can move on. But thankfully, we are not doing that. We'll just do that. And probably screw ourselves over. This is bad, this is bad, this is bad, this is bad, this is bad. Okay, we're good. No, we're not. We're not, because I forgot about this. Okay, now we're good. Yeah, so there we go. So, Quarth is also known as Block Hole in Japan. And it was first released in 1989 to Japanese arcades, where it ended up being pretty darn successful, all told. Now, once again, the whole objective of this game is to fill in these geometric shapes. If they do reach the bottom, your ship gets crushed, or, as apparently the manual says, your ship gets quarthed. We might get quarthed here in a second. Okay, no, we're good. I don't know if Quarth is an invention for the North American markets, just to, I don't know, give some sort of meaning behind the title, but it's pretty funny. I like the idea that your ship can get quarthed. So, I'll accept it. Oh, I thought that was going to be good enough to fill it in, but nope, I was wrong. This should give us multiple, shouldn't it? No? Oh. Okay, yeah, we're about to get Quarthed right now, see? Oh no, we're Quarthed! We got totally Quarthed! It's so bad! So, once again, game released in Japanese arcades, and it ended up getting ported to basically everything. I mean, everything in 1989 terms. So this includes not only the Nintendo Entertainment System, but Japanese computers such as the MSX2 and the Sharp 6800. We'll go ahead and just do an actual stage this time, just so we can show off the other mode. These two computers, Konami actually had an extensive history of making games for, such as like proper sequels to like Castlevania and Metal Gear, for instance. So it makes sense that ports of Quarth also showed up for them. So yeah, as you can see now, we have to get rid of 688 blocks in order to qualify. Let's see if we can't do that without completely messing up. Now, this game does have some interesting localization differences between North America and Japan. While the game does take place in space, kind of like regardless of the region, it should be noted that the ship designs are actually considerably different. And this is not including the Game Boy version. This is just Quarth in general, I should note. Because in Japan, your ships just look like kind of like generic, like almost like stylized command capsules from like the Saturn V rockets and whatnot. Basically like stuff NASA used. Whereas in North America, or at least internationally, you end up having ships that are like more winged, kind of closer to what we're seeing here in the Game Boy version. The ship names are also different as well. The Player 1 and Player 2 ships in Japan are, well, let me tell you what the names of the ships are in the United States first. In the United States, the names of the ships for Player 1 and Player 2 are Ding and Dong, respectively. The name of the ships in Japan, on the other hand, are, and wait for it, Block 1 and Block 2. They were being very creative when they named these ships. It's very, very good. It's very good. So, Quarth was a pretty well-regarded puzzle game back in the day. But despite that, it actually never got a proper sequel, which is kind of odd. When you think about it, even games like that you would have a hard time thinking of a sequel for, such as like Tetris, still got like the new Tetris and Tetris 2. Like games that at least try to iterate on the Tetris format somewhat. But Quarth, unfortunately, just was not one of those games. That isn't to say it hasn't shown up in some odd places. It's been re-released for mobile phones, for instance, as part of like different Konami collections. Although not a whole lot of collections that have actually made their way over to the United States for one reason or another. And in fact, even more recently, I kind of didn't want to do that, but oh well. And it also has like shown up as like mini games and other Konami games as well. This includes a Mystical Ninja game, or Ganbare Goemon game, that was released in 2015 for the Nintendo DS. A game that I am going to murder its name, called Ganbare Goemon Tokai Dochu Oidu Tegugageshi no Maki, is its full title. Mystical Ninja games have a thing about having weird minigames in them that are usually based upon, or sometimes just straight up ports of classic Konami games. Like the Mystical Ninja game that came out for the United States, for the Super Nintendo, for instance, allowed you to play its first level of Gradius, for example. So, not unexpected that Quarth managed to make its way in there. So I do have to share something. I'm not a particularly big fan of Quarth. It's not exactly my favorite puzzle game. I do have to admit, I think that they've done a very good job with this. And I have to admit, I am enjoying myself right now. Which most definitely was not the case when I was playing this earlier. So, you know, good on them, I guess. They did it. Oh no, that's bad. But yeah, not typically my favorite game ever. I was hoping that would be good enough, but nope, it wasn't. Are we gonna hit Quarth? We're gonna hit Quarth! No! We got Quarth! We are only 63 away! We are only 63 away. Oh, that's so disappointing. So, well, getting back to the menu. You can see that this is a game that does have Game Link cable support for multiplayer. All up to 2 players. Quarth in the arcades actually was interesting in that it did have 2 separate multiplayer modes. Let's play stage 2. One where the 2 ships like shared a screen, you had cooperative play. And another where like you had split screen, essentially, where each player had their own board, and when they would clear blocks, they would send garbage blocks over to the other player. This game just has the split screen functionality, so, and versus mode. So unfortunately, there's no cooperative play in here, which is too bad. I do like a good game that has cooperative play in it, but you know, you can't have it all sometimes. Look at that, not bad. Right. Give him my license. So, the publisher of this game is not Konami, which I think a lot of people would expect, but rather Ultra Games. Now, this is probably a well-known thing, and we're going to talk about this more once we get to games such as Ultra Golf. But in short, Ultra Games is actually a shell company for Konami. Because, you see, back in the day on the Super Nintendo, Nintendo was worried of the Super Nintendo, on the Nintendo Entertainment System. My apologies. Nintendo was very worried about there was going to be dilution of the NES, particularly the library with poor quality games, much like the Atari 2600 had experienced in the early 80s, that they only allowed 5 games a year to be published by companies. So Capcom, for instance, only published 5 games in 1988. Or, you know, or like LJN could only publish 5 games. So, this seems like a very good idea in theory, but unfortunately, there was a very easy loophole to get around this. One that I'm pretty sure Nintendo was aware of, but they were okay with it because of the fact that you could just reason away, like, the brand dilution aspect of it and everything. And the idea behind this was that you would just create a shell company, and then they would just release those games for you. And of course, Ultra Games was one of them. I think people most remember Ultra Games for the games that they would end up releasing for the NES, such as the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles arcade game. But they have quite a few titles that would be released for the Game Boy as well, even though I don't think the Game Boy had the same restrictions placed upon it. Once again, we're going to be playing at least a few Ultra Games published games, such as Ultra Golf. So we'll get a little bit more into their history and more the nitty-gritty details then. And as Kuma said, well, if we close this loophole, Konami won't be releasing more titles, so yeah, exactly. And you want Konami to be releasing titles. Kind of full stop on that one. Konami is a legendary publisher. Like, just kind of full stop. Oh boy, I just keep messing this up. Yeah, Konami, legendary publisher. Maybe one of the greatest third-party companies in terms of just, like, game quality in the 90s. With games big and small, too. Like, you know, whether it's like a lesser-known title such as, like, Legend of Mystical Ninja, or something big like Metal Gear Solid. Like, they could do it all, and for a long time, seemingly could do no wrong. It's a darn shame they don't exist anymore. Definitely don't. They definitely don't exist. Not holding out for the Capcom Redemption arc. I hope they do have one, Kuma. I hope they do. But, yeah, unfortunately, neither am I. I do like these preset stages that very clearly are setting you up for some hot combos. Alright, we just need to get one more. And then we're good. We actually beaten the stage. Okay, well, we're gonna mess that one up, so don't worry about that. Yeah, that's okay. Oh, so we get bonuses. Interesting. So is there an actual end to this stage, or does it just kind of keep going? It just keeps going. Oh, because we're at stage 1-02 now. Interesting. Huh. How interesting. Yeah, you know, I've actually completely come around on Quarth now. I think I'm actually a fan of this game. My test plays that I did earlier, I was honestly kind of like, I'm not really sure about this. But, no, Quarth is good. Quarth is a very good game. And you can take that to the bank. Or something. This actually means we actually had 2 good games we've played today. Which was rather unexpected and also weirdly disappointing, given that one of them is also just a straight-up ripoff. I screwed myself. I actually made an unwinnable situation there. Huh. Well, still. Not bad, everybody. Not bad. I am quite proud of how we did that. As you can see, a very no-frills game, by the way. Very, very no-frills. I think before we set off, let's go to 3, and let's do level 9. Also, it just takes you to 3-09. Interesting. It is nice that there's different block designs for each level you play. Oh, we got a pretty high qualification need to do here. It is very strange to me that the game doesn't end when you, like, reach the qualification. Also, yeah, I mean, this is an interesting choice, I have to say. Ooh, we got wrecked there. Very interesting choice for a ship design. I don't know if the ship designs are different in the Japanese version of this game, like the arcade and other home ports are. But I would presume not, because it's like one of the few games in the series, possibly the only game where you can actually select multiple ship types. So it seems unlikely to me. The ships don't control differently, by the way. This seems to be just purely aesthetics, which that's fine. You know, doesn't necessarily have to control that differently. Kind of screwing myself over here. Okay, fill that in. Uh-oh, am I gonna Quarth myself again? You know what? Yes, I did. You know what? It's actually just fun to say the word Quarth, if I'm being perfectly honest. The word Quarth is a fun thing to say. Yeah, I don't like this game more than I like Hatcherus, but this is fun. It turns out the Game Boy has a lot of really good puzzle games. But yeah, I think that's gonna do it for us today, everybody. But yeah, we had 2 good games that we've played today, which is, once again, more than I was expecting. I actually thought this was going to be a 0 out of 4 just based upon some stuff that I did beforehand. I do appreciate everybody joining us today. And for next week, we are going to be playing a very interesting set of games. We're actually going to be playing our first fighting game for the system, as we check out Samurai Showdown, jump into Dragonheart, play, of course, our prerequisite license game in The Little Mermaid, and then finish off with another Nintendo banger, Kid Icarus of Myths and Monsters. But that'll be next week. We will be back tomorrow for a stream, by the way, where we're going to play a very normal game of Mega Man 7. Definitely Mega Man 7. There's definitely not going to be anything funky about that. And that'll be at 5 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. And remember, there are previous episodes that are going to be on YouTube that you can find at... Let's get this up here real quick. www.youtube.com/user/one-more-time-GFSN. But yeah, check it out. Previous episodes and other stuff I've done. But with that, take care, everybody.